I'm Anna. This is Pilates. Welcome. Today we're going to do just a stability ball as our additional prop. If you don't have one, no worries. We're just going to add it in for some inner thigh and like low core feedback. You could sub in a yoga block or a short foam roller, or if you like a rolled towel. Other than that, any comfort for knees or head. So kneeling pad, or if you've got like a towel to roll to put under the head, you could also do the yoga mat hack. So just hold your mat for a little bit of extra support. And I think with that, just checking in with your breath throughout class, right? Make sure I'm going to give you some options to level up and down. So if something doesn't feel comfortable, feel free to bump back to a previous option and I'll give some kind of reminders as we go. But we'll get started. Let's do a little standing warm up here since it is a little chillier here in Portland. So we'll do a couple just standing mobilizations and we'll come back down to the mat. So we will do some stuff on our wrists here. So let's start with just a little figure 8 kind of wrist, gently, not forcing, but just seeing how the wrists are moving here before we weight them. And then we'll reverse that. So your figure 8, the opposite direction, just letting the elbows rest and kind of checking in with your stack. So if you have a tendency to kind of like lock the knees and lean back, seeing if we can bring the ribs on top of the hips. And it should feel like the weight's pretty even in the feet here. Nice. And then you can shake that out here. And let's do some shoulder rolls. We'll do one shoulder at a time. So it's okay if the spine sort of twists as we roll, just noticing that that shoulder blade can slide and glide on the rib cage. How's the breath? So kind of tuning into maybe where were we breathing when we came in, starting to see if we can find a little bit more of like a deep side and lateral breath through the rib cage. And let's reverse this. Now we'll come forward. Yeah, nice. Just mobilizing. So what's cool about Pilates is it builds a lot of proprioception. So we can start to have a deeper understanding of kind of where different parts of our body are in relationship to each other and how they move, which is pretty cool. And then let's step out a little bit wider here. We're going to take a side bend stretch. So we'll reach the arms up and over. You'll grab one wrist, doesn't matter which one, and then we'll reach away on the diagonal. Nice, easy breath. And then coming back to center and then switching sides. Nice big breath in and then exhaling to switch. And so as you're doing this side bend here, noticing if there's a tendency for the rib cage to want to pop or reach behind us, see if you can restack the ribs on top of your hips. It'll give you a better side stretch, but it will also give you that support in the side stretch. So one more each way. Inhaling and exhaling, last one here, easy with the neck. And then you can drop the arms with the wide stance. Let's take a little twist. So I'm going to twist and look behind me. And you can let the arms kind of go loosey-goosey here, letting everything move. So ankle joints, knees, hips. And kind of notice that when you look with your eyes, you get even a little bit more rotation. So we know that eye focus can change our axis in our thoracic spine, which is kind of cool. Yeah, it's like if you hold your head still and twist, you'll notice, ooh, it's not very, very good here. But when you add your eyes, you get a lot more. All right, and then settle down from that last one. Let's come to the back of our mats here. We're gonna take a couple roll downs. Let's go for 3. And then on our last one, we'll come down to hands and knees. So let's do a little sweep up here. Nice big stretch between armpits and hips. And then you're gonna tuck the chin, look towards your body, and you're gonna trace your body with your eyes. As you roll down, bend the knees if you need. Still looking at your shins. Push through the feet, lift the core, and then retrace your body as you roll back up. And then a nice big sweep. So we're just adding a little bit of a neck stretch here. So as you tuck the chin and rotate the crown of the head to the ground, you're going to use your eyes to trace your legs. If your knees want to lock at the bottom, just check in there, soften those knees a little bit, shift the weight forward, and then press through the feet to roll all the way back up. Nice big breath in. You can look up to the hands. And then on this last one, we'll roll down. We're going to walk all the way out to our hands and knees position. So if you have a kneeling pad or if you need to adjust your mat here, now's your moment. So we're going to start with a couple cat cows. I've got my wrists underneath my shoulders versus my head. So just notice the shoulders are away from the ears here. I'm going to round the spine, gazing towards my inner thighs, really pushing my ribs to the ceiling. And then as you come into your arch, see if you can keep the shoulders from falling towards the ears, or rather ears falling towards the shoulders. And we'll just take 3 more like that. So we've got 3 different parts of the body moving here: pelvis, spine, and shoulder blades. So can you, with smooth breath, just kind of check in with each of those pieces? So I'm scooping my abs to around the spine, ribs are reaching to the ceiling, shoulder blades are spreading. And then when I reverse it, I've got a little retraction, opening the sits bones. And noticing your neck and your eyes can play a big piece of this too. So maybe I'm looking towards my belly button or my inner thighs. And then as I extend, maybe I'm looking to where kind of the top of the wall and the ceiling might meet. So we're gonna try a couple barrel cat-cows here. So basically it's like you're on the inside of a peanut butter jar, and I'll show this kind of 2 different ways. I'm gonna side bend to the right. So I've shifted my hip and my ribs and my gaze to the right. I'm gonna round my spine. So this is your familiar cat-cow moment. Then I'm gonna side bend to the left, and then I'm gonna come through my extension. So continuing in one direction with the circle, to the right, you can get your head involved. And then to the left, as you pass through center, we've got that rounding and arching. Can be a little dizzying. Once you've tried this for about 3 or 4 in one direction, see if you can reverse it. So you're looking to the left, you're rounding, pushing away. Can you get that same motion that you found at the same depth in your cat-cow while we're adding a little bit more complicated choreography? It should feel kind of nice, rolling the ribs. You can imagine if you're inside a jar, you're scraping the inside of the jar with your rib cage here. Getting every little last piece of peanut butter jam out. One last little thing in our hands and knees. So once you're even, we'll come back to neutral here. Just double check if we've got our hands a little bit far in front that they're stacked underneath. So you should feel more tricep and lat engagement. We're gonna do a little bird dog. So I'm reaching opposite fingers and toes, or maybe floating and holding for a breath. And then coming back to my starting position at the same time, and then switching sides. So challenging yourself to lift and return both limbs. You might find that you favor maybe the leg returning a little bit sooner, or the arm returning a little sooner. This is a lot of oblique work, right? You can feel the shoulders. Definitely some core work here. Trying to stabilize in your neutral without letting your body shift or side bend. And we'll just take 1 more each way. So just a breath cycle per down dog. Don't worry about being at the same time as anyone else, right? Your lung capacity and breathing patterns are going to be individual. When you finish your last one here, this is my last one. Nice, you guys. Come back to your bum. So you can cross your ankles and roll back. So here's where if you've got your ball or your yoga block, this is a nice piece of feedback for us. So we'll put this guy between our thighs, because we know, especially if we've got hip flexors that like to overwork, the ball can be a really nice tool here. So we're gonna sit up as tall as we can in our sits bones, walk the feet out and flex them if you need a little more space. That's a really nice strategy. I'm gonna show with my feet down. We're gonna squeeze the ball, hands on the thighs first. You're gonna roll back away from your thighs. Once your arms straighten, it's gonna be your max. You'll take a breath in and then exhale to curl forward. And you can use the arms if you need to offset some of the core work. So that's a nice tool. If this feels like, okay, pretty good, I don't really need my arms, then just float the arms forward. And so I'm rolling back off my pelvis like I'm spilling water backwards. And then it's my upper abs as I exhale, squeeze that ball to come back up. Yeah, lovely. And typically the ball is really nice if we notice that we have hip flexors that are pretty tight, that our feet kind of want to lift. The ball can be a nice little reminder to get those inner thighs and low abdominals to activate. Articulation, nice hip disassociation, pretty important here. On the next one, we're going to hold in a place, maybe not our lowest point, but where we feel like we could stay for a couple of breaths. So we want to keep that C curve. We're going to reach just one arm out to the side, come back to center, and then the opposite arm out. And so the biggest piece here is, am I shifting when I reach that arm out? So think of squeezing the ball as you reach that arm away. So when I reach my right arm out, for instance, I'm going to squeeze my right inner thigh. Yes, nice, even more. And that's going to keep my rib cage from doing like a big shift. Here's your oblique work, anti-rotational. So secret obliques. or maybe not so secret obliques. Let's try one more each way. Lovely, last one. Then you can come all the way forward. Take that ball out for a second. Walk your feet a little wider. Let's do a little windshield wiper. So if you need for flexibility, you can bring your hands down, or maybe challenge yourself to keep the hands up. The further my feet are, usually the easier it is to get that rotation because they've got a little bit more space. But ideally, we've got pretty even rotation and internal and external rotation. Oh, yeah, totally. And I'll switch sides throughout. Yeah, that's really fine. And I'll usually switch throughout, but if you want to be there, then I'll stay facing this way. Try one more each way here. And then come back to your same position. So we'll take our ball again. Wait for you here. You know, the challenge of the filming while live with masks. I always like to remind people, you guys can still ask questions too. The masks definitely make it feel like no talking. Right, when you're ready, you're gonna squeeze the ball here. So we're gonna roll back. And this time we're gonna do one arm reaching overhead. So without letting the back or the ribs pop, can you reach one arm up and then bring it back down? So here's, again, some oblique work for sure. The more you allow the shoulder blade to move, the less likely, the rib cage is to pop. So you have to kind of lengthen the lat and then breathe, squeeze that ball. Good, nice. Notice if the elbow wants to bend a little sooner, can you keep a straight arm? So almost think about if you're gonna lift the side of your shirt up when you reach. Yeah, nice. One more here. And then keep both arms together as you lift. Exhaling to lift, inhaling to lower, squeeze. You can always come up a little higher. Checking in with the neck here, should be nice and free. Let's go for 3. Hopefully we're feeling the abs now. 2. And last one. Nice, definitely some abs, right? Take that ball, take a little hip flexor, kind of break for a moment. So you're gonna bring your feet together, hands on your ankles. So you get to use your legs essentially and your arms. We're just gonna roll back, a little bit of a cat-cow here in our butterfly. So you're getting a nice stretch through the shoulder blades. Then you're gonna pull your elbows, lift your chest to the ceiling. Nice, just try 2 more like that. So we should feel like the pelvis moves here too, rolling back, stretching through the shoulder blades, gazing towards the belly button, and then drawing the shoulder blades back, elbows. Nice, one more like this, little stretch here. And turnout can be a nice way to rotate the legs if you find the hip flexors ever get so chatty that the abs can't be accessed. But it is important to practice getting those hip flexors nice and strong. So we're gonna take the ball, let's put it back in between the thighs. We're gonna roll all the way down onto our back, but nice and controlled. So reaching the arms forward, or if you need more support, you can do thighs. You're gonna roll back 1 vertebrae at a time. Once your head is down, you can pull your feet closer to your bum. So in kind of the best position, we've got almost where we could like touch the heels with our fingertips. If the knees don't like it, bump your feet a little further away. And then let's reach the arms to the ceiling here. We're gonna take a couple roll-ups with the hips. So we're lifting the hips 1 vertebrae at a time. And then take a nice breath at the top, hips are lifted high. We're gonna roll all the way back down. And so thinking of like peeling a sticker off the mat versus smashing the back into the mat to lift, and then gently placing the spine back down. So we wanna feel like, yes, glutes and hamstrings are definitely working. We get some support from underneath the bum, but our core is assisting here on that lift. So a little different than our yoga shoulder bridge. The next time we're up, let's stay up at the top here. We're gonna repeat that same arm motion. So we're gonna keep the hips totally stable. We're gonna reach just one arm out to the side, little hover, and then draw that arm back up. And then try the second time, side, inhaling and exhaling. And here, a little easier to stay stable because our core doesn't have to work quite as hard, but you can feel where the glutes maybe start to drop towards the ground. See if you can keep the hips nice and high. A little squeeze on that ball here. Let's go for 1 more each way. Checking in that we're not coming too high onto the neck. And then pause with the arms to the ceiling. You're gonna lower the bum just about 2 inches and then pulse the glutes back up. So push through the feet to lift. Little tiny lower, and then a press through the feet to lift. And we'll take a couple more pulses like this. As you pulse, notice, and maybe even hands come to the hips. Is it the hips that are pulsing or is it the ribs that are pulsing? So we wanna make sure that the back isn't arching while we pulse. So the core is on, but just that hip joint is lifting and lowering. So it's pretty small. Let's go for 3. Steady breath for 2. And then last one, you're gonna reach the arms all the way overhead and then roll your spine down 1 vertebrae at a time. So you can keep the ball between your knees and then just take a little twist from side to side. We'll come into a couple crunches here. Just loosen up that low back. So we're gonna go into an imprint. So that's our flat back position. So I'm gently rotating my pubic bone towards my chest, using my core to kind of find that tucked pelvis versus my bum gripping. I'm gonna bring the hands behind the head here. Clasp the hands. Elbows can be as narrow or as wide as you feel like your neck and shoulders kind of comfortable. We're gonna nod the chin and curl up. Exhaling to lift, you're gazing kind of just past the knees here. And then lengthen to lower back down. And so we know that eccentric will exhale to lift here. This is concentric. Eccentric is a better way to build strength, which is the lower. So if you curl up in 1 count, try lowering in 2 counts. So if you curl in 1, can you actually reach your ribs away from your hips and keep your core on for 2 counts? And functionally, we'll take a couple more crunches here. Right, we want our abs to work in standing positions when we're reaching for something that's heavy, right? Functionally, we're not in a crunch all the time when we're using our abs in the real world. So really a good thing to consider is working that eccentric as we lower. Nice, so we'll take one more just like this and we're gonna spice it up a little bit. So last kind of regular crunch here. Keeping that back connected to the floor as you lower back down. So on this one, we're gonna exhale, take a breath in, reach your arms behind your thighs. You're gonna exhale to pull yourself up a little bit higher. I'm gonna take a breath in here. I'm gonna exhale, keep my height, bring my arms back behind my head, and then lower all the way back down. We'll try that again. So exhaling to curl. Inhale to reach and exhale to pull yourself up even more. You can use your arms here. Take a breath in, hold your height. Exhale, bring your arms back behind your head and then lengthen all the way back down. Nice. We're just gonna try 4 more like that. So exhaling to curl. Inhale and exhale, use your biceps, get a little higher. Squeeze that ball, inhale and exhale. Bring those arms behind the head and lengthen back down. So you can squeeze that ball to give yourself a little extra assist. Exhale to lift. Inhale and exhale to pull. Take a breath in, squeeze that ball. Exhale, return the arms. And lower back down. You get 1 more here, last one. Exhale to lift. Inhale to reach, exhale to pull. Take a breath in, squeeze that ball, exhale, reach your arms back behind your head and then lower all the way back down. Nicely done. You can take that ball out for a moment, walk the hands out wide, walk the feet out wide, and then take a nice big windshield wiper from side to side here. And so for this next thing, we're gonna do a little side leg series. Choose whichever side gives you the best visibility. I'm gonna roll onto my left side to show, but either side will do both. So if you've got your ball, you can make this a little more exciting if the knee likes it. We're gonna roll onto our side and we're gonna put that ball behind our top knee. So I've got it kind of wedged in there. Now, if there's any tension through the kneecap, just get rid of the ball and bend the legs. I'm gonna be all the way down on the ground. For more support, my bottom leg can be bent. For more challenge, my bottom leg can be straight. Make sure it's active if it's straight. I'm gonna bend my right arm, and then as I sweep my top leg back, I'm gonna reach my top arm forward. And then I'm gonna come back in. So little extra hamstring, right? We tend to work the top of the hamstring and glute quite a bit, but we don't always get that lower hamstring. And then as you're sweeping back, just noticing if your hips want to roll forward or your ribs want to roll forward. Keeping that hip nice and square and stacked on top. Yep, and another fun challenge, keeping the ball. Sometimes there's a fabric kind of costume component to this. If you've got slippery pants on, it could be a little bit harder, or your ball's really deflated. Try one more here. Nice, you guys. Yeah, and you can feel where that supporting leg is really helpful. Bring your leg back to neutral. We're gonna float it to about hip height. We're gonna turn the leg out. So it's knee up, foot down. Then I'm gonna rotate so it's knee down, foot up. And it should feel like kind of right where your swimsuit line would be. That's what's moving to allow for rotation, especially on the turn in. So you could put a hand kind of back where like your jean pocket or swimsuit line would be. And then just floating that leg at hip height. Good, yeah, nice. It's a bit of work. Let's try one more each way here. So we're gonna do one more in external rotation and one more in internal. Pause and internal. So here's your turned in, knee down, foot up. Without losing the ball, can you pulse that foot to the ceiling? And we'll go for 4, 3, relax the neck, 2, 1, and then you can take that ball and stretch that leg out. Nice. So for ease, you can roll to the other side. I'm gonna do a full switch just so I can see. Feel free to do a full switch if you want to. So when you're ready, ball underneath your top knee, and then for a little more support, bent bottom leg for more challenge, straighten through that bottom leg and really activate it. Once you feel your stack here, we're gonna bend the top arm. We're gonna sweep the top leg back as we sweep the top arm forward. Nice. And it should give you, as you bend and stretch, it should give you a little bit more counterbalance. So you might feel that you can open up this hip more than you might if you didn't have this arm reaching forward. We want to get that nice stretch through the front of the hip. If you're really tight through the quad, this might be pretty stretchy. And if it feels like there's that tension in the knee, then that's when I would get rid of the ball. Just might be a little too tight for this much flexion, depending on how small your ball is. And you've got that support from the supporting leg. So definitely flexed foot, quad is active. Yeah, nice. Pause on this next one. So we're gonna be neutral. So the legs back in neutral, hovering at hip height. I'm gonna use my outer hip to press, external rotation, knee up, foot down, and then rotate my legs, so knee down, foot up. And definitely feel free to take this one. It doesn't have to be rhythmic. If you're like, I'm not sure if I know how to find internal rotation on one side or external rotation on the other, take your time. And again, that kind of back of swimsuit, back pocket of jeans, that's sort of the area that's gonna allow us to find that rotation. We've done these with like a band before, so you can think about the outer hip press when you come into external rotation. When you're in internal rotation, a lot of it is just allowing the mobilization. We don't use internal rotation a lot in real life, but it's really important to balance the hip joint. Next time you're in internal rotation, here's the fun one. We're gonna do some pulses. So once your knee is down and your foot is up, pulsing that thigh up to the ceiling. Anyone else feel their hamstrings? Keep breathing, checking with the neck. Let's go for 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you can take that ball out, take a little rest. Yeah, it's pretty hamstringy. You guys feel that lower one? Mine was cramping a little bit. So it means I need to do more. So let's lie on our front here. So we're gonna do a little extension. So we know that glutes support extension. So for better back bends, usually we need bum activation. So we'll start kind of from square one and we'll build up our extensions as we go. So for this first one, I'm gonna bring my arms all the way back by my side. I wanna make sure my glutes are on and my core is on. So I'm gonna press down through the tops of my feet so my legs are already straight. So my bum is really already engaged before I lift. And then I'm just gonna rotate my head to hover, and I'm floating everything off the mat. So it's not a huge back bend, but a tiny hover. Take a breath in. And then as you exhale, rotate and rest your opposite cheek on the ground. And so we'll continue with this. Go for about 6 to 8 of these. Inhale to hover. And then exhale to rotate. So we're getting a nice little neck stretch. Your shoulder blades are rolling onto your back as you lift up. Nice, yeah. And then roll back down. And I'll have you take a couple more. I'm just gonna show the shoulders here. This is looking nice. So if we lift and our shoulder heads are forward, right, we're not going to have very much extension. But if we can get our shoulder blades on our back with a little external rotation, suddenly we get a lot more lift. And that's going to come into play when we do a slightly bigger back bend. So something to consider here. And once you have completed your 6 to 8, I'm just going to take 2 more here. So if you didn't count, you can take 2 more with me. And then we'll rest our hands, or rather rest your forehead on your hands, bend your legs and take a little windshield wiper here. Just let that low back loosen up a bit. So kind of 2 options with this next one. It's more exciting with the ball, but if the ball is frustrating, you don't have to use the ball. So the hardest part of this is getting into it. You're going to put your ball in between your heels. If that's like already frustrating, nicely done. You guys nailed it. Now we have to keep the ball. So the next part of this is a little frustrating. So you're going to rest your forehead down. We're going to squeeze the glutes. So squeezing the glutes, heels are going to squeeze into the ball. And then trying to lift the knees, maybe the thighs, off of the mat. And then lowering back down. So I'm squeezing so much with my bum that I can float my lower leg, knees and thighs off the ball or off the ground. Now, if this goes all into the low back, then we want to try not to tuck the pelvis. So there shouldn't be a big shift in the pelvis. If you notice that you're kind of jamming your pubic bone into the ground, see if you can lift without changing the pelvis shape. Now, that's not to say that the weight won't shift, right? Obviously, as I lift my thighs, there's going to be more weight here, but there's a difference between tucking and just keeping the pelvis neutral to lift. Does that kind of make sense? Do we feel some bum? Yeah, nice. We'll try about 2 more here, just getting those glutes on. And last one. Also quite a bit of hamstring here too. And then you can take that ball out. You can let it fall to the side, lengthen your legs out, give your hips a little wiggle. So our last little extension piece for this section is going to be a little cobra. So I've got my hands, don't feel like they have to be too close with the mat, but they're about shoulder distance here. Now my glutes are on, so I definitely feel them, right, supporting me. The first thing that's going to lift is my shoulder blades. So you can think of drawing your shoulder blades onto your back, then my chest and my head comes up. And I'm going to lower back down in the same order. So chest and then head versus head lifting first. So I'm pushing into the ground. I'm opening the front of my chest, shoulder blades lift. And then I'm coming up, legs are super active here to support. And then lowering back down. And elbows are kind of generally reaching towards the back of the mat, just to give us a little external rotation. Nice, yeah, good adjustments. You get a little bit of tricep here. We'll try one more like this. If it feels comfortable on this last one, hold for a cycle of breath, maybe even floating the arms off and seeing if you can keep that height. Yeah, and there's that shoulder blade strength. And then you can roll all the way back down. Keep the arms where they are. Push back and take a child's pose here. Nice, easy breath in your child's pose. Yeah, back bending I think can be really tricky, but if we can utilize our glutes, it becomes a lot, in our shoulder blade position, it becomes a lot more supported. And then very gently, let's come up here. So we're gonna do a little more abs. So we'll cross our ankles, come back to your bum here. So this time we're gonna come onto our forearms for this one. So you can roll all the way back. And then once you're here, if I'm a little bit arched through my low back, I'm gonna think of gently rocking into my imprint position. Yeah, exactly. And then we're gonna start with just, can I keep this? And can I butterfly my thighs out and in? And it might not be your max range. You might notice if you go all the way max, you kind of pop the spine. So see if you can keep that curl and just open and close. So this is kind of square one. And then at the same time, the reason this position's hard is it's really easy to relax. So see if you can push out of, yeah, so it's like a J curve. I'm having to lift with my upper body, but scoop with my low core. So if this feels okay and this looks good, pause here, you're gonna try a march. So I'm gonna lift one leg up And then lower it down. Nice. Love and exhale for this whole series, just for the effort. So contracting the core, pushing down into my arms. You can push down into the supporting foot as you lift. Can you keep your pelvis stable, basically? If this feels pretty good, you're like, got it, can keep the pelvis stable. Next time you float one leg up, keep it up without letting your pelvis arch. Draw the second leg. Nice, then try your toe taps here. So I think the secret of this one is pushing through the arms every time you're tapping, so that instead of falling away from the pelvis, you're almost giving yourself more assistance to keep the core connection. Nice. If you wanted to make this harder, I'm not saying you have to, if you wanted to, you could start to extend that leg long, like a bicycle. Yeah, like your single leg stretch, just to increase the challenge in the core. So we know the lever is further away from the center. It's going to be more work. So the more you can push through the arms. Nice. Let's go for 6 more here. Exhaling to extend. Got all those other options if you need to mix and match a little bit. It's tricky. We have a pretty short range here. Last one each way. Good. Nice. And then carefully lowering one leg down. Nice. And then lowering that second leg down. You can reach all the way back down onto the ground here. So a little bit more shoulder bridge. So we'll bring those feet without the ball this time. Again, a little closer so your fingertips could just brush the heels, as long as knees are comfortable here. And we're gonna roll all the way up to our shoulder bridge and pause for a moment. So we're gonna come into a march. So for my march, I wanna think more of pushing through the leg that isn't lifting. So I'm gonna lift my right leg to tabletop, but I'm gonna actually think of pushing through my left leg to do it, to keep my hips stable. Then I'm gonna lower the right leg down and push through the right leg to lift the left. And I think if you change as we kind of switch sides here, if you change your brain to what the supporting hip is doing, you'll find it's much easier to prepare it to lift and to keep the hips really stable here. Nice, yeah, good. Let's go for 4 more like this. So we're just kind of getting in the groove, check the ribs. It can be really easy for the back to pop in this one. And then let's pause with the right leg up in tabletop and left leg supporting. We're gonna tap the bum down, lowering the hips, and then push to lift the hips back up. Tap and lift. And again, can you keep it, maybe like a little tactile feedback on that hip joint? Can you keep it in the hip joint versus ribs or back? We're gonna go for 3 more. Tap and lift for 2. Last one, you're gonna stay, pause here. We're gonna take 6 toe taps, tapping that right foot down and floating back up for 5. Really keep pushing through that left hip. I know it's burning. 4 and 3, still breathing for 2 and 1. And then lower that left hip down, lower the spine all the way down onto the mat. Give yourself a little hip shift here, kind of check in to make sure you're square again. We're gonna lift straight up again with both feet down, stabilize through your right glute, and then lift your left to tabletop. So we'll take our pulse taps on this side, dropping the right hip down, and then pushing to lift. Your left hip is gonna give you a little bit of assistance as you tap your bum and lift. So the more you reach that thigh to the ceiling, it'll help you keep that pelvis nice and stable. Try 2 more like this. And then you're gonna hold up on this next one. So here's our toe taps. So we're gonna stabilize through right glute, tapping for 6. Can you keep that left hip lifted for 5? Check in with the ribs for 4. Even weight through the shoulders for 3 and 2. Last one. You can put that foot back on the mat, try to find your best shoulder bridge position here, even hips, and then roll it all the way back down. Nice. Okay. If you have your ball, you can snag that ball here. We'll do a little bit of core work. So I'm going to start with my legs in tabletop. You could always bring your legs down for this one. So that'll be kind of making it a little bit easier. I'm going to come into imprint position. So here's my flat back position. I'm going to float one leg and then my second leg to tabletop. I'm going to hold my ball. I'm going to sweep the arms overhead. And then as I reach the arms to the ceiling, I'm going to curl up, little crunch, reach that ball over my shins, and then lengthen back down. So we already did some crunches earlier, right? Now we're just making it a little harder because our legs are in tabletop. the further back you reach your arms overhead, the more challenge you're gonna have on the lower. So maybe you keep the arms over the head, maybe you sweep it all the way back to the wall behind you. Nice little exhale here. Let's curl up for 2 more. And then we're gonna hold on the next one. So if you need to change your leg position, we'll exhale and stay. So arms are over the shins. Without lowering my head and shoulders, I'm gonna twist my arms over to the left, and then inhale and exhale, twist my arms over to the right. So I'm just reaching to the outside of each hip, trying to keep my shoulders from resting on the ground. So it's definitely more of like an up and over than simply leaning from side to side. Squeeze those inner thighs together. Let's go for 4. Nice, you guys. 3. Last 2. Last 1. And then you can lower all the way back down. Either give a little rest to your legs or pop that ball in between your thighs. Reach your arms out to a T. So my modified version is my feet are gonna stay on the mat for my twist. Kind of my classic version, my legs are in tabletop. We're gonna add the head today. So when my legs fall to the right, I'm gonna look to the left. And then as I exhale, I'm gonna squeeze the ball, bring the legs back to center. As the legs fall to the left, I'm gonna look to the right. And so for this one, we're only going as far as we feel like the back can support it. So if you feel any wrenching in the low back or if the shoulder lifts, we know we've gone a little too far. See if you can let your neck rotate in the opposite direction of your legs. Great for more support. Tabletop can be a little bit closer to you. For a little more challenge, a little further away. Let's go for 1 more set. So we'll even ourselves out here from side to side. We'll come back to center. Again, you can keep your legs in tabletop to challenge. If you need to lower them down for a little break, feel free. I'm gonna take the ball into my hands again. My head stays down, I'm still in imprint. I'm gonna reach my arms and my legs away from each other, double leg stretch, and then draw everything back in. So I love an exhale for this, because I feel like I can really support my low back. And then I'll inhale as my limbs come together. If that feels totally opposite of what you prefer, as long as your back's in a good place. Legs don't have to fully extend. You can choose your height. We're gonna go for about 3 more here. Most important component is what's happening in my spine. This is super extended. And last one here. And then when you finish that last one, you can set that ball down, hug your legs into your chest. You can take a couple circles here in the sacrum if that feels good. Just make sure you circle both directions. So we're gonna roll all the way onto our side again for a little bit more side glute work. So again, we'll do both as long as you feel like you can see. So no prop for this one. We're gonna lengthen. So 2 options, bottom leg bent, bottom leg straight. This is gonna be a little bit harder. So go with what you prefer. Make sure it's really active if it's straight. I'm gonna take my top leg and lengthen it up to about hip height. And then we're gonna make some little circles about the size of that stability ball that we've been playing with. We're gonna think of reaching your heel back each time and opening up the front of your hip. So you're emphasizing that kind of posterior chain extension. Because for most of us, the forward is gonna be the easier, where we might just tend to move a little bit more forward because we can see it. And then easy neck here. Nice, how stable is your trunk? So can you keep a little bit of bottom oblique going? Let's reverse these circles here. So still pushing back, we're just going the opposite direction. Nice sweep to emphasize opening the front of the hip and getting the glutes on. Right, so we're trying to minimize, here's your oblique work, minimize the rocking and rolling in the torso. Good, okay, pause here, hip height. We're gonna do a little rainbow. So I'm gonna lift my leg and tap my toe in front, turning my leg in. And I'm gonna lift my leg and tap my heel in back. And you can use the mat kind of as a guide. So you're making a little rainbow, turning the leg in. We already worked that turn in, turn out. So we should have a little more available. If the leg doesn't tap to the back, no big deal, right? If you notice that when you tap, you start to roll open, then just indicate that. So you can just find that rotation, kind of stop at the place where it feels like you've got the range. Do we feel some hips now? Hopefully, okay, good. Yeah, internal rotation is awesome. We want glutes and centered hips. So centered thighs and our hips rather. Let's try one more each way. Nice, and you can give that a little, oh, thank you very much for supporting me. And then same thing, so you can roll over. I'm gonna do a full flip just so we have a visual. And you might find too, right, we don't necessarily have to take the same variation on each side. So if one side feels like, oh, I actually would like to have the bent supporting legs, I need a little bit more info, bent or long. And then once you've got your stack here, we're gonna float that leg up. We're gonna sweep back. So pick a direction to circle in, but I want the emphasis of the reaching back so that we're getting that glute and hamstring activation and letting the front of the hip just open up. Right, fingers, of course, is a good option if you need just like a little reminder. What's cool about our muscles is that if we've got any like kind of maybe I want to say nervousness, but if we're like, oh, I'm not sure if my body is like going to support me here. If we can just close the chain a little bit, our nervous system goes, oh yeah, totally cool. I've got this now. So just having like fingers on the mat can give our muscles just that much comfort that we can go, okay, now we have the strength to do it. And then let's reverse it. So we'll sweep it back. So there's nothing wrong with adding surface area if it's giving our nervous system good feedback to teach those muscles how to work and take over the job. Just easy breath here. On this next one, let's pause at hip height. And then we're gonna make our rainbows. So we're gonna sweep up, we're gonna rotate the leg in, tap the toe down. So here's our internal rotation. And then lifting up, floating and tapping the heel down. And if either one of those directions means our whole shape kind of falls apart, the tap is less important as the rotation. We really want that to happen from the hips. We had a good kind of warm up with the ball, checking in, it's really coming from the thigh versus just the foot indicating the tap here. And hands on hip, you know, any kind of tactile feedback is really helpful too to give yourself a sense of where you are in space. We'll just take one more each way. And then take a little rest. Okay, so we're gonna come back into some extension work. So we'll come on to our front here. So for the first one, as long as this is comfortable, you're gonna come up onto your forearms. And a good way to kind of measure is hands to elbows. And for this, you can actually kind of relax the low back. So take a couple breaths here and just notice how much maybe low back is on or gripping. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna push with my right arm. I'm just gonna push my weight more into my left. And then I'm gonna take my left arm and push more weight into my right. And so your ribs will follow, but you can feel where this is some shoulder work. So we're just having to activate through the shoulders to push weight into the opposite shoulder. And you'll notice there's a little follow through with the spine. So it's quite a bit of work. This is a really good prep for if you're working towards, you know, lots of plinky stuff or just having more time on hands and knees just to get those shoulders to support us. It's surprisingly tiring. And then when you've done that, take a little rest here. Again, you can rest your forehead on your hands, give your hips a little wiggle. Okay, so that kind of that action that we felt in the shoulder, we're gonna try to utilize in the next exercise. We've got our ball. And for this one, I'm gonna clasp my hands. You could do prayer emoji too. The clasp hand kind of feels nice. And I'm gonna go for sort of supported wrist forearm zone. All I'm gonna do, so my glutes are on, my core is on, we're kind of finding that support system again. My head is hovering. With straight elbows, I'm gonna push the ball away. My shoulders will ride up towards my ears. Then I'm gonna draw my shoulders back down as I pull the ball towards me. So here's just some shoulder, we're isolating the shoulder blades here without bending the elbows. Now we want the shoulder or the elbows just a little right micro bend. That looks good, just so that we're not locking if we have a tendency to. And if this feels okay, maybe we stick with this. If we're ready to add extension, the next thing that we'll do is we've got glutes and core on. I'm going to drag the ball towards me and I'm going to start to press down. So that same feeling that you had with the little isolated shifts. And then I'm lengthening and lowering back down. And I can choose how far I'm going to come up. So maybe I stick with a little extension where I'm just gazing towards the ball and then I lower back down. Floating ribs can stay on the ground. Or maybe I can take it all the way up into kind of more of a swan dive position. It's a ton of work in the shoulders. So don't push it if it feels like you're unsupported. Our elbows tend to bend when the shoulders are ready to be done, right? Then we kind of pull in our biceps a little bit more. So give this, 1 to 3 more tries. It's a ton of shoulder work. We've added this unstable surface just to make it a little bit more challenging. And glutes and abs are on. Just want to make sure that it feels like the whole chain is working, not just the low back. And then when you finish this last one, no rush. If you want to sneak in another one, you'll pass the ball off to the side. And then we'll take a child's pose with a little lateral stretch this time. So for this one, knees together or knees apart. Knees together if your low back felt like it was working a little more than it should. You're going to sweep your arms to one side and then shift your hips away. So if I'm reaching to the right, I'm going to shift it to the left. I should get this really nice stretch through my left side body. If you can get your head all the way to the ground, if it feels like you can't quite get the head to the ground, you can always make a little fist pillow with your inside arm, or if you've got a yoga block handy. And then sweeping your arms to the opposite direction here. And again, pushing those hips away if you want a deeper stretch through the side body. And then coming to center for just one more breath here. And carefully we'll roll ourselves up. So if low back did get involved at all, sometimes it happens, we'll work our core just a little bit more because that's a great way to counter the low back. So grab your ball. We're going to do a couple full roll-ups. So if bent legs feels better in your spine, or if you're working on full roll-up, this is a really nice variation because we already did a half roll back. So we kind of know this move, and we'll sweep our arms overhead. And then what we'll do is grab the legs to come back up and squeeze the ball. So this is a nice variation. The arms definitely are going to help in this one with the timing and the coordination. So when I'm back, there's like a couple things to keep track of. I'm going to use my arms as a lever with my breath. So I'm going to sweep the arms up and then exhale, kind of like I'm throwing my arms, and then squeezing and grabbing. Yeah, exactly. And if we take advantage of eccentric, go as low, maybe no hands on the way down, and go as slow as you can to really work that part. And that's a great way to build strength for the lift. And obviously straight legs, right, is always an option too if it feels like straight legs is a little harder and that the lever is a little further away. And let's collectively say we'll do 2 more full roll downs with either variation. Really working on slowing the lower down. And if you're feeling like, oh, I'm a pro, I've done this forever, then slow both directions down too. But that coordination with the arms and the breath and the ball squeeze can be really helpful. We're gonna finish on the up. So let's pause when we're at the top and we're seated again here. And then we're gonna do a little teaser balance. So another great way to work the core, a little isometric contraction. So just like your half roll back, I'm rolling back off my sits bones. I'm gonna use my arms. I'm gonna squeeze the ball and then try to lift my feet to kind of parallel with the ground. Nice. So if we feel like we're in a flat back position, we can use the arms to kind of find a little bit more of a curve. And we're just squeezing and holding it. It should feel like quite a bit of deep hip, but also core work, maybe a little arm support. If you want, you can try letting go of the arms, or with the ball, play with maybe releasing one hand at a time. to kind of build. Yeah, nice, totally. I know, and this is no one's favorite move. It's like our Pilates plank. Let's go for 3 and 2 and 1, and then you can rock all the way forward. Nice, you guys. Take that ball out here for a moment, and then take another little windshield wiper. So either hands behind the back, or for a little challenge if you want to play without hands. We'll take a little stretch in our twist here. So whatever knee is forward, and I'm going to rotate kind of towards the camera, but whatever leg is forward, we're going to take a nice little side stretch. So just sweeping up, and then you can grab your ankle or shin that's bent and stretch towards it. And we'll just move in and out of this for maybe like 2 or 3 back and forth. Really reach, try to get a nice stretch through that armpit. If a little rotation feels good, so if this kind of looking towards the shin or reaching towards the ceiling feels good, you can throw in a little twist. You don't nearly side bend enough, I think. Once you've done about 3 of those, then we'll switch the legs to the other direction. So you can just swap the legs over. Once you've got your opposite leg, same deal. So you can come down to the forearm if you feel like, oh, I want a little more. Typically the body will kind of tell you what feels good or what it wants if you listen. So finding like a little experimentation of breathing into either like a little roundedness or a little extension, just to kind of explore what's feeling tight. Probably won't be the same both sides since we've got a little asymmetry here. Yeah, or a lot. That's a good tool. The more you know. And then let's come all the way down. We'll do a little stretch. So I'm going to try this stretch called a banana stretch. So bear with me as I walk you through it. So if your legs are out in an X, you're going to bring your right leg to your left leg. And then I'm going to bend the leg that's the outside of the mat to basically hold this leg in a side bend towards the corner. Then I'm going to bring my body towards the same corner. And I can grab my wrist. So right now my right leg is pointing to the left corner of my mat, and I'm grabbing my right wrist with my left hand. And I'm taking a nice little side bend stretch here, and I'm pushing through my left heel. And hopefully you get a little bit of a stretch through maybe the armpit, the lat, the hip. You can always make it a little more extreme if you feel like you need more, but keeping the body flat. And just take a couple of breaths in this one. Maybe closing the eyes. And then when we come out of this, we'll keep the legs where they are, but you're going to straighten out your torso and bring your arms out to a T. Keep your left leg crossed, or whatever leg is crossed on top that's already crossed. Bend your bottom leg in, and now you're in your figure 4 stretch. So for your figure 4, feel free to play with some twisting, or maybe you want to pull the legs into the chest and make some like little circles. You can play with flexing and pointing the feet, kind of checking out how they're moving, some little circles, crunching the toes. So the more neutral your pelvis is here, and kind of the more the top thigh is pressed away, you'll get a little bit of a deeper stretch in your figure 4 stretch here. And once you've done a couple of those explorations in your figure 4, you've done some breathing, we'll switch. So starting back out in that X, if that's helpful, if you need to kind of remember what you did to set up, you're going to bring your left leg to your right leg. So I've got that reach across, my outside leg is bending. And then I'm kind of holding that leg in place. So if my left leg is going to the right, I'm going to also side bend to the right, and I'm grabbing that same wrist as the long leg to side bend. And the idea is, as you breathe, can you relax the hip of the leg that is straight? So the bent leg has a little bit of energy through it, but that stretching side is relaxing. And then when you're ready to come out of it, keeping the legs where they are, but just squaring up the torso and reaching the arms out to the side. And you'll bend that straight leg, keep the hook so that your ankle is crossed for your figure four on the second side. And again, exploring, right? We might find that one movement feels really nice on one side and that we don't get as much out of it on the second side. So I always feel like exploring a couple different motions is nice because then you might discover a spot that's calling to you. Maybe drawing the legs into the chest, right? Some circles. Can you turn your head from side to side while you're here? Is it too much tension? Exploring with the toes and the ankles. We did a lot of glute stuff today, so give those glutes and hips a little love here. And then when you're ready to leave, no rush, just think about how you want to exit. So maybe you want to roll to the side and kind of gently support yourself up. Maybe you want to hug your legs into your chest and do like a couple rock and rolls to keep the energy going. Just kind of preparing yourself for how you're gonna get up and move. And then I'll leave you guys there. Yeah, thanks for coming. Have a lovely rest of your, what's today? Friday.